over a year ago on this channel, we made a raspberry imperial sour, and we were smart enough to whack half of that into that barrel right there, and it's finally ready. After a lot of patience, time has finally paid dividends, and today we get to bottle our imperial raspberry sour. Let's get started. So this is the barrel that used to hold the barrel aged oatmeal stout. It's been recently emptied. And if you guys haven't done barrel aged beers before, the reason we wanted to line these up so closely is because when a barrel goes dry, it really quickly starts to cop a bit of damage. So it's best to always keep it full with something so that the wood stays watertight, basically. So this thing's just been recently emptied. We're gonna fill it straight back up again. What I've done here is I've got the gas line pumping into at really low pressure, like 1 PSI, pumping into the tap, and I've got this lid loosely opened, with the idea being we're just trying to basically purge it with a bit of CO2 at the moment, make sure that there's less oxygen in here so we don't damage our beer. And then over here, we have this inline filter set up ready to go on the tank. So as you can see down the bottom, there's a lot of trub, if you can see down there. I made a few mistakes with the way that I use these raspberries, and I'll talk about them in a second once we start transferring. But the really cool thing about this filter here, this inline filter, which I recently got from Brew Tools, is that you've got a couple of different meshes, so you've got different sizes of filter you can actually apply. But the really, really cool part is that you can purge this thing, which I've already done. So you can connect the gas post to the beer post, flush this thing with CO2, and then release it with the little release valve there, so that you don't have to do that sacrificial beer loss. You don't have to get that first pour coming out and dump it out because you've already purged this thing with CO2. So it's already a zero oxygen environment, which is really, really cool. Anyway, that's enough talking. Let's get to the actual transferring, shall we? We're gonna connect this beer line up to this, what do you call it? Bung that goes into the bung hole. It's not a perfect fit with this one, with this bit of tube going into this. And that's intentional because we need air to come out while liquid goes in. Otherwise we're gonna have an explosion. So it's just enough space in there that my idea is that if this is sitting at the bottom of the barrel, the now carbon dioxide that is sitting there is just gonna slowly be pushing out of this tiny, tiny hole in this bung hole. So at least that's the theory anyway. So let's connect this thing onto here. All right, so now we've got the beer post connected to the beer post there. There should be nothing left to do except open this up, pop this in, push this down all the way in. Yeah, that's about the bottom there. Okay, now we should be done and ready to transfer. Let's open you up. Yeah, that's pretty much all that's about. All right, now that post connected there, let's turn the gas up a little wee bit. And we should be good to start transferring. So this inline filter is really, really cool. I love the visual display you get, being able to see all the clarity of the beer as it kind of transfers over. That's pretty awesome. Anyway, I could do a whole video on that particular inline filter if you guys are curious later. No dramas about that. In any case, we should get a full barrel of 20 liters because the liquid level is about here, which I'm guessing is around 35 liters. So we should get a full barrel and then most of a full keg. But we'll see. So the idea being that we wanted to have some in a keg, some in a barrel, and then we want to A/B test them in like 4 months or whenever we decide to actually bottle this thing. All right, that is transfer 1 complete. So we have exactly 20 kilos and 20.2 kilos inside this barrel. So just about 20 liters, which is awesome. Super keen to start aging that one and let it just sit to the side for the next couple of months. But we still have a decent amount of beer left in this keg, in this tank. So let's transfer it over. Actually, let's take this whole thing off. Oh shit, that's heavy. If you are enjoying this video, be sure to check out the other stuff on our channel and throw us a like and subscribe down below. It helps us out a whole lot. And consider checking out our website for some awesome merch or our Patreon in the link down below. Now, in order to actually have this beer bottleable, I need to carbonate it first. And look, I could do bottle conditioning and basically just add sugar to all the bottles and trust the super dormant yeast in the barrel to wake up, recarbonate the bottles, and Bob's your uncle. Or I could do the more trusty method of actually whacking it into a keg,
force carbonating it, and then bottling from the bottling gun. And that typically is my preferred way to do this. I know that the former is more traditional, but I like the reliability of knowing exactly how carbonated I'm gonna make it, as well as also having less sediment in the bottles as well, because if you want that bottle carbonation, it means that you're gonna be creating a few more yeast cells as well. So the way that we're gonna do this is by creating a closed loop. And we do a full explainer on how to transfer beer with 0 oxygen in this video up there. But basically the principle of this is that we want to have the beer connect line on the keg connected to the outlet of the barrel. We want the gas line of the keg to be connected to the top bung of the barrel. I've already pre-purged this gas line with CO2 right before I shoved it into the barrel. I've already done a little bit of a sacrificial pour of the beer out of the barrel, because that first part that comes out of the barrel that's going to interact with the air inside the tube is going to get oxidized. So I've already done a little bit of sacrificial pour from that. So now everything is a closed loop. There's no oxygen anywhere here, and we're ready to transfer. So all I need to do is connect up the, well, actually, let's let the gas out of this keg. Oh yeah, I've also purged the keg as well. Important to do that too. So I purged the keg of CO2. I can connect the gas line of the keg up to the top of the barrel. I can now connect the beer line of the barrel to the beer post of the keg. You get the general idea. We're creating an infinite loop here, and we're trusting gravity to do the transfer for us. So this is gonna take a little bit because we're not forcing pressure into this to speed things up. So I'll cut back to you when the keg is full and we can start carbonating it. I lied, I totally lied, because I completely forgot that I actually wanted to give you some tasting notes about what this tastes like so far flat from the barrel and why I believe it's now ready to be bottled. So first and foremost, on the nose, like, it's wild how similar sour beers are to wines, to like white wines, to like Chardonnay, I suppose, because it's got this really buttery nose. Like, it's got citrus, and it's definitely got that tang and that acidity in the nose for sure. But there's this soft oakiness that's now starting to come through, which is so interesting. Like, so the nose already is like delightful. And then on the palate, it's a totally different beer to what originally went in there. If I was given this in a blind test and I was asked, what are you drinking right now? I would honestly say that it would be some kind of a wine. Like, I wouldn't know what wine because it's so bizarre, but I would say some kind of lightly barrel-aged white wine. Maybe like some really funky Chardonnay, or I don't know, because it's kind of got this, it's got this fruity citrusiness that's like really reminiscent of like a New World New Zealand Sauv Blanc. But then it's got like this oakiness coming through the background that's like an old school Chardonnay. And then bringing all of it together is this acidity that is way more acidic than most white wines. And that's because, you know, sour beer. And this like fruity, acidic zest. That's like, it's kind of a little bit of raspberry in there. There's kind of a little bit of, I don't know what the right word is. It's like white wine characteristics, like grapes, like eating grapes, like green, fresh grapes. There's like that kind of sweet zest to it. And at the very backbone underneath all of that is like this chocolate note. And I'm forgetting what it was at the moment while I'm doing this, but I'm fairly certain there was a barrel-aged Christmas beer or chocolate beer or something like that. Some kind of dark beer was in this before I filled the raspberry up with it. It was either the barrel-aged Christmas stout or it was the oatmeal stout. I've got a feeling it was the oatmeal. So I think the roast from the oatmeal is coming through and giving these like little layers of depth to this thing, because it's kind of tasting like chocolate coated raspberries right now. It's so cool. It's way better than the original version. Spoilers. All right, the transfer is now done. So it's time to whack this keg into the fridge, cool it down to serving temperature, and start force carbonating it for a couple of days. I'm probably gonna do, I don't know, like probably 3 days at 30 PSI, and then we'll be just about there and I'll reassess from there. So I'll see you then. The beer is now fully carbonated. It's been sitting cold for a few days now, and it is ready to be bottled. So we've got our station kind of set up here. I've got a bunch of pre-sanitized bottles ready to go. More, you know, over there because I don't have enough space here. And I've got the bottling wand / bottling gun, whatever you want to call it, ready to go. There's going to be a little bit of spillover, so I've got a tray ready to catch all the excess foam, because we do want a little bit of foam to come out and over the top to protect the rest of the beer inside the bottle. I'm also first pressing down on the CO2 release, which is connected to a tank down there at about 4 PSI. That way, I'm pre-purging each of these bottles before I go filling it with beer, so I can actually protect it from being oxidized once again. The first bottle is always so much foamier than the rest, but it'll calm down after that. You can also play with like the length of beer line and the amount of pressure that you're pushing into the keg to make this bottle fill up to stop doing quite so much foaming if you want to try and preserve a bit more beer, which I might do after this one, because my goodness, we're getting a lot. That's that there, put this on top. I've also carbonated this quite high because I kind of am getting the vibe. Man, I lost a lot on that one. I'm definitely gonna turn down the gas on the keg. I've also carbonated it quite high because I want it to kind of drink almost like a sparkling wine. I feel like extra carbonation is really gonna make this beer pop, leaning into those wood characteristics, those almost white wine style characteristics. So I think highly carbonated, like a Saison, is the way to go with this one. But clearly I need to fix something there, because that is a lot of foam and I'm losing a lot of beer if they're all gonna be like that. So let me muck around with this CO2 and we'll see how the next bottle looks. Okay, I've now dropped the CO2 going into the keg to around 8/9 PSI. So we'll see if that helps us a little bit more. But I think this is just gonna be quite foamy in general because it's highly carbonated. So we'll just see how we go, I guess. It also would have helped if I had these bottles cold before I started trying to fill them up, so that there was less turbulence created when the cold beer touches the warm bottle. So if you can do that and you're gonna be doing this, it's worthwhile, like sticking them in the fridge or something if you can for a little bit. But now you can see I've turned that pressure down, and yes, it's filling slower, but it's also making way less foam. So lesson learned after that first one. It's like, bottling is like having children. The first one always comes out a little bit weird. All right, we are getting close to the top now. Oh, better get a bottle cap. Oh, and if you are gonna do this, make sure you're using champagne bottles or high pressure rated bottles, because you don't want these exploding in the garage as you've got them sitting and aging or something. And down you come. Oh, all right, there we go. 2 down, many to go. I'm gonna do the rest off camera so you don't have to sit there watching me do this, rinse and repeat like 20 different times. But this is the goal, and then once this is done, we'll move on to our final step. Now it is time to get waxed. Nothing weird. What I do mean by that is waxing our bottles, because when you've taken the time and effort to barrel age a product, it's really nice to put that little finishing touch on it and not leave it bare, and kind of mark it as something a little more special than your typical brews. Like, I love all the beers I make, but barrel aged products hold a special place in my heart for just being something a little bit extra, a little bit more unique, a little bit finer. And it's worth, you know, commemorating those more special moments with a little bit of a wax top. Makes it feel more elegant, more refined, a little more finished as a product, I suppose. And then it's always a fun experience, you know, peeling off the wax and popping the bottle and pouring it out to friends and family. So why not do so with this particular batch here? And I just thought that the silver would look quite nice on the bottle toppers. So I'm gonna rinse and repeat this for a little bit. Oh, by the way, heat up your wax to the point where it's like thick and gooey, but not thin. I overshot mine. I had to wait quite a while for it to cool down, because when it's too cold, it drips off the bottle. You don't get a nice wax coating like that. When it's not hot enough, obviously, it's just big and thick and clumpy. So somewhere in the middle where it's kind of like almost like a thick paint-like consistency, or even a little bit thicker than that, is kind of what you're shooting for. So typically, like, the lowest heat you can go on a hot plate and let the wax warm up slowly is gonna get you there. Now, I'm gonna rinse and repeat for the next 18 bottles. So I will see you with a bit of B-roll, and then we'll move on to our final step, which is gonna be the tasting and seeing what kind of a beer this is actually turned into, what it actually tastes like, what it experiences like, and yeah, we'll go from there. Now, let's go in for a taste and see what the final result is. First of all, I just got to say the head retention on this thing is wild. And I think the extra carbonation actually makes the head retention hold even better. It makes it fluffier and foamier because it's just like sitting there on top and it lasts forever. It is, as I mentioned, overcarbonated. I accidentally lost some of the bubbles with this one because this was the last bottle I was filling for the day, and then the keg kicked and I like blasted it with a little bit of CO2 and dispersed it a bit. The color is kind of still reddish, but leaning more towards like an orange, like a pink orange type thing, which is interesting. I wasn't expecting the color to hold. With fresh fruit style beers, the color does normally fade after a few weeks, and considering this one's been in a barrel for like a year and a half, not surprising at all. But let's go in for a taste. It's so good. That is, ooh, that's surprisingly refreshing. So I only tasted it, and have been only tasting it warm and flat, obviously, because I've just been taking wee little samples out of the barrel. That has got quite a fresh tang to it, kind of like a, as I've mentioned earlier at the start of this, like white wine. At the moment, I would liken it to like a New Zealand Sauv Blanc, like from the Marlborough region. It's got very fresh, zesty notes, kind of like halfway between orange zest and lemon zest. There's this like fresh popping thing happening. There's that tinge of raspberry going on in the background, but the raspberry's kind of morphed quite a lot by this point. So it comes in as like fresh raspberry for a moment and then very quickly turns into like more of this complex woody type character that you'd get from like a Chardonnay, how you have the wood in like an old school Chardonnay where the wood influence really comes in with the rest of the fruit character and makes it more like this buttery oaky type thing as opposed to being like fresh and fruity like a Sauv Blanc. And then it finishes quite tart and crisp on the palate. So it's like, it kind of leaves you feeling dry in the mouth in a good way, like a really refreshing lawnmower beer or like a sparkling wine, funnily enough. So this is a very, very interesting beer. I would call it an absolute success. I'm definitely gonna make another sour and whack it in the barrel now for long aging again, now that I've done it for this one. It's enormously surprising how much I actually like this, because I'm not the biggest sour person, but I could get behind this. The oak influence coming through and that extra complexity from aging is absolutely delightful. And from memory, I believe this was an 8% sour, so it's got a bit of booze up there, so you can kind of treat it like a wine, which is very, very cool. The rest of the bottles, I'm gonna let sit aging for, well, I guess until I get around to them, because they're still gonna keep developing in the bottles because they're not spirits. They're alive, they're living, and they're gonna continue to mature and turn into new and wonderful things the same way that a red wine would, as long as it's treated properly and kept at the right temperature. But what we will do soon is a comparison between this one, the barrel-aged version, and the non-barrel-aged version, because I did squirrel away a couple of those for a side-by-side, but we'll release that in a future tasting video. Anyway guys, thanks for sticking around. Let me know if you have done any barrel aging projects, particularly around sours, and what your results were like. Drop some comments down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Cheers, catch you next week.